Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui, coming to you live from Beijing. After a devastating 8.1 magnitude earthquake hit Nepal on Saturday, the death toll has now risen to more than 4,000, with almost 7,000 injured and more than 100,000 left homeless. Numerous countries, including China and India, have rushed to provide aid, but precarious roads beset by landslides have rendered much of the country inaccessible to rescue efforts. What are the prospects for the tens of thousands stranded across the country and for those who will sleep in overcrowded tent cities tonight? What are the unique challenges facing Nepal, and how will the tourism-dependent nation move forward? To discuss these issues, we are joined in the studio today by Mr. Mahesh Maski, Ambassador of Nepal to China, and Mr. Lawrence Brahm, founder of the Himalayan Consensus Institute. But first, let's take a look at this.
In some parts of Kathmandu, the search and rescue has been halted so they can start to clear the rubble. A mechanical digger claws through the wreckage of a home. 12 people were pulled dead from this block, with no survivors. As a crowd of locals look on, the emergency workers dig through the concrete. Their efforts are hampered by leaking gas canisters. An unintended spark could have disastrous consequences. But their efforts are to no avail. In the basement, 4 corpses await. Nonetheless, they're not giving up hope of finding survivors yet.
There may be possibilities because in somewhere where there are some void space, there may be possibility of some live victim. As we have seen in Bangladesh, after 17 days, one live victim is extricated from the rubble.
Elsewhere, some semblance of ordinary life was returning for those who are camping out on the streets, although electricity and water remain cut off. Water is being trucked to strategic points in the city by the army, and most people are getting enough for their basic needs. But other shortages are starting to be felt.
So food in the market, we are not getting enough fast food.
This man told me that food was now in short supply, that they couldn't find what they needed on the streets, and other supplies were running out fast. And more important concerns for the bereaved, burying the victims of the earthquake. Funeral rites taking place all across the city as the dead are retrieved from the wreckage of the homes in which they died. Funeral pyres burning as the survivors turn their attention to rebuilding their lives.
Welcome back to the studio discussion here. Mr. Ambassador, what is the eventual forecast of the damages, particularly the death toll in Nepal and surrounding areas?
It has already crossed 4,400, the death tolls, and almost double of that are the injured so far. But it is likely to be increased because the scale of damage is very high. And as you know, the difficult terrain Nepal has, because it's a very high magnitude Richter scale earthquake, so the damage has been seen in many parts of the Nepal, not only concentrated to Kathmandu. And because of this situation, our transportation system has also been sort of dislocated a little bit. And you have to concentrate more on airways kind of rescue and search and rescue operations. So the scale may be increased in future. Apart from that, then we have to take care of the people who have injuries and who may have disease, because after the disaster there may be an impending epidemic, especially of water and sanitation and respiratory diseases. And then there is a challenge of reconstruction and rehabilitation. So it is a series of challenges that Nepal has to go through.
Lawrence, what's your estimation of the current severity concerning the devastation in Nepal and other areas?
This is really, without question, one of, if not the worst, earthquake we've seen in Asia in decades, and it's certainly equivalent to the Chengdu earthquake in damages or Yushu in Qinghai several years ago. It's particularly acute because many people are in rural areas where you can't get transport, you cannot provide medical care, and of course you have so many people out in the open right now at a time that the rains are beginning to come. So this is an urgent time for international aid to come in. And it's a time when particularly China and India both have first movers, have been able to provide a lot, but I think there's a lot more that we can see coming forth, and it's a great opportunity for China to demonstrate huge soft power to the world, and of course to overcome many of the misperceptions and anxieties in South Asia. And the experience in particular of China with the accumulated challenges of both the Chengdu earthquake in 2008 and 2010, the Yushu earthquake, all of which are on this same shared Himalayan tectonic plate, is a very, very unique experience. And the equipment that China's developed over this time to deal with this type of situation in mountainous areas is so relevant to Nepal, and it's really an opportunity for China to demonstrate its soft power to the world.
Mr. Ambassador, China, India, France, Italy, Britain, Canada, the United States, Australia, Taiwan, Pakistan, the United Arab Emirates, Israel, Switzerland, Norway, Singapore, and South Korea have all reached out to your country and provided relief materials at this moment. Not long ago, President Xi Jinping went to Islamabad, signing a lot of agreements with the Pakistani government, bringing their $46 billion for the construction of the economic corridor between Pakistan and China. Do you think that has built up the expectations for our neighboring country of Nepal to have more assistance from China, so that, in the words of Lawrence, soft power of this second biggest economy can be constructed in an acceptable manner? What's your take about what China can do at this moment?
China and Nepal are very old friends, and China has always stood by Nepal when there is great need. And this time also China has shown that at the time of need, China can immediately mobilize resources and is ready to help, Nepali people, which we are seeing it day to day what is happening by the support of China. So far as because this is a massive disaster which would demand for a great effort for reconstruction. We should have a very long-term vision of how to reinvigorate, how to reconstruct, how to rebuild our nation. And not only reconstruction in that sense, but also to have to revive our world heritage that has been partially or completely destroyed in some places. So this is a big challenge. And for that, our immediate neighbor, China, along with all the neighbors, and it also shows the sympathy and the comradeship and goodwill towards Nepal from the international community. So we welcome all the support of the different countries, but particularly from China. I'm being the ambassador of Nepal to China. I've seen how China has worked day and night to help us. And to answer your question, we are already a founding member of AIIB, and we are in a One Belt and One Road initiative. We are part of it. Nepal is also a country which is of the ancient Silk Road, Southern Silk Road. So, and also there's the neighborhood diplomacy for China. All these being an immediate neighbor, we are looking towards China for this massive effort to rebuild our nation.
Indeed, China has been the biggest provider of foreign direct investment in Nepal. Other than this, normal life inevitably has been traumatized in Nepal for hundreds of the locals. What do you think of the immediate help that the International Red Cross can provide at this moment? For example, children who may have been left homeless, who have lost their loved parents. So they are put at a greater risk because of waterborne diseases, malnutrition, shortages of food, water, and electricity. What do you think of the immediate, the urgency for children to get whatever help?
Most urgent is water. You can survive without food for several days. Water, within a day, people start to die. And of course, because many of the water systems in Kathmandu are very old, and with the disruption of the earthquake, you would have both sewage water and clean water being mixed. So bringing in water supplies is urgent. Sanitation facilities is critical at this time. Waste disposal is critical. These are the immediate urgent things, and of course medical. And I think one of the things that China has developed, which is particularly relevant to the crisis in Nepal now, is the mobile medical clinic. And if mobile medical clinics can be moved in quickly, this, of course, will alleviate much of the tension because in Kathmandu, first of all, they don't have enough hospitals to accommodate, and in the rural areas, movement of people will be very difficult. And I think also in the Pokhara area, there is an airport, if I recall, that is under construction with China. If that can be temporarily finished, that will allow then the lifting of mobile clinics into this area to treat the rural.
Do we suggest clearly that we need more helicopters from
Yes.
India and China?
Yes.
That's one of the bitter lessons we drew from the 2008 Winton earthquakes. Similar things happened, like landslides that prevented troops from moving into the worst-hit areas very quickly.
Yes, I fully agree with you. Right now, because of the difficult terrain of Nepal, very challenging terrain, and because of the dislocation of the transport system, the airways services, particularly rescue helicopters, ambulance helicopters, and even cargo helicopters, seems to be the strategic means to deal with this situation. So we have already asked the Chinese government also to provide that kind of support, and they have already promised 3 helicopters of very high altitude capacity to be dispatched for Nepal, and there are also helicopters coming from India and probably from other countries also, because of the particular situation in Nepal, they could be the most useful. And also we have to, because of the airport congestion, we will have to think of some different alternative strategy of having maybe smaller planes deal more services. For example, maybe we from nearby provinces of China, they can fly to Bangladesh, to Dhaka, from there to Nepal, very short distances. That could be one way of going through this traffic congestion, air traffic congestions also.
Earlier you mentioned the unique terrain and location of Nepal is nestled high on the mountain, isolated country, so to speak, but it's called a beautiful country, of course, for the sake of tourism. However, let me ask you to clarify a little bit what your government has done to consolidate some of the tiny villages that dot its mountain ridges. And some of them, I mean, it's more than a day's hike from the nearest road. What have you done to consolidate the villages so that they are quick-proof and may not be easily destroyed? To my knowledge, most of the houses in the remote villages in surrounding areas of Kathmandu have been damaged. 90% of them collapsed. That may have caused heavy casualties.
Especially in those areas where they're near the epicenters, outside the Kathmandu Valley. Those are most hard hit. It's not the same in every place, but those near the epicenters are the most hard hit, and many of the communities have been destroyed. Only few houses have been left. That is true. But you see, if you look at these Nepal's topography, then our traditionally our houses were studded on the hills. There are ethnic groups who would live in a certain height, and then live on the lower, or some group very high in the mountains. So this always poses some kind of environmental challenges, some kind of disaster challenges to us. And Nepal government has always tried to by the means of education and communication, to raise their awareness how it could be risky, and they have tried to provide some support, but it was not enough. And when this kind of disaster happened, then we have to really do our best to try to provide the support, but with the limited resources within the reach of the government also. And you must have observed that how the Nepal government and also the Nepal people are working day and night. And you have these two sides. One is there's a huge challenge, people are on the street, but there's also another thing, which is the people are coming out to help others. You see that kind of solidarity in Nepal, which is I think one of the unique characteristics of Nepal. So despite our limitations, Nepalese people are doing their best, and they know that there's an impending epidemic. But also the Nepalese government, the health sector, and international, for example, Red Cross and other agencies are trying their best how to contain the damage or prevent it before it becomes a big problem.
President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Keqiang both sent condolences to the Nepalese government in the wake of the devastating earthquake on Saturday. In their letters of condolences, both Mr. Xi and Mr. Li made it very clear that we will do whatever we can to help a neighboring country, but they also expect the Nepalese government to help themselves in what amounts to the National Salvation Campaign. But how difficult is it for example, the immediate forces that could be mobilized, the army? The number of the army, I mean the size of the army seems to be very, very small. In the case of China, back in 2008, it's the troops which were first mobilized. Despite the shortages of heavy machinery, they used very simple tools to help dig out victims from behind the collapsed buildings. This time around, I'm afraid the armed forces compared to China, I mean, it's very small. It could be strong limits to what they could do at this moment.
The Nepalese armed forces are small, but remember they have been involved in mobilized on both sides, the Maoists as well as the armed forces, which have been merged in a 10-year insurgency, so they've been in the field, they're experienced. Also remember, Nepal's a country that's never been conquered. The Gurkhas who come from Gorkha, where the epicenter of the earthquake are resilient.
Man, they have a very good reputation for bravery.
Bravery, and in this circumstances, there's bravery is coming to the forefront. But this is where China can help, and that is with the technology. We just talked about helicopters. This is something where there's a certain kind of helicopter that can fly in the mountains, and there's a skill that China has with its own side of the Himalayan region that is very essential. And if helicopter support, medical support can be added. Also, you talked about the enormous amount of removal of debris to find people and also to bury people and also to reconstruct. This is where the equipment of China will be of enormous benefit, and some of the skill sets that can be brought in to the Nepalese army and government, I'm certain. And also we talked about the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. The timing is right for that bank to really demonstrate what it can do in Nepal, because again, a lot of the challenges of development and now rebuilding will be challenges that are relevant to China, to Asia, the narrow roads, the mountain roads, the topography, and also the electrical water systems that are essential in addition to the heritage, but the actual infrastructure, and particularly the possibility of adopting renewable and efficient energy systems, decentralized energy, which can be adaptable to a country like Nepal with very strong ultraviolet light, and the ability to put these systems in alongside the heritage restoration can actually be really a foundation of cooperation for rebuilding Nepal.
Hopefully one of the top priorities on the agenda of AIIB after it goes into operation later this year will be how to help reconstruct the country of Nepal. You are watching Dialogue with Ambassador Maskey and Mr. Lawrence Bram. We are discussing and assessing the consequences arising from the 8.1 magnitude earthquake that hit Nepal so hard on Saturday, and what we can do to help reconstruct, save lives and reconstruct this country. We'll be back in a short while. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Ambassador Maskey, what can you tell us about the role that the Nepalese army plays in its rescue operations at this moment?
Nepalese army plays a very important role, not only in this. They have always played a very important role in rescue operations. And last time when they had, in Nepal there was a damage in the Kodari highway, which links China with Nepal. It was the army which reconstructed that road, as you know. And it's a question. What the question you asked to Lawrence was, I think, is also media visibility. So the media was mostly focused on Kathmandu, but the army's strength was dispersed to manage all over Nepal, wherever there is. Outside Kathmandu also there were a lot of damages and they were doing it. So they had to distribute their strength, redistribute their strengths. And they are a part of the coordinating committee which manages this disaster management. They are very well trained and they are very capable. So what Lawrence was saying, if they have this kind of technical support from international friends and countries, I think they can do a lot. And as Premier Li Keqiang and President Xi Jinping have pointed out, that is ultimately the Nepalese people who have to build their own nation. This is what we are expecting, together with army and police and Nepali people in general, with the support of the international friends. We can really build our country.
Many of our airliners have been sent in to help evacuate the Chinese nationals who have been left stranded there. Some of the mountaineering teams were seriously affected by the avalanches that the earthquake has triggered. What can you tell us about the development in this area for the evacuation of Chinese nationals? Because aftershocks were so strong that for 3 times the main airport in Kathmandu was closed on Saturday. How difficult was it and has been for countries like China to help their nationals come out of your country?
It was really challenging, but I think the Chinese embassy in Nepal is doing an excellent job in coordinating these rescue efforts, and they have also already done that in most of the part. And now, you see the situation in Everest base camp. The casualty was because of the avalanche that fall from high mountain to people who were in the base camp as well. So that is one part of the problem, and other who were trapped, who were coming down. So the lower side has already been taken care of, even though there was about 17 people have died in that. But there is still some suspicion that in higher highland of this mountain, there may be some people trapped. And for that, the helicopters are being utilized for that. And this high altitude helicopter from China is also hopefully, very useful for that.
We keep our fingers crossed for those who are still missing, despite the rescue of those survivors. But very quickly, Mr. Ambassador, what can you do to clear up the garbage that has been left on the hillside of Himalaya? Because years and years, those mountaineering people must have left much garbage behind. We are talking about lives, but the garbage could also be a big problem, right?
Yeah, this is a side effect of the mountain tourism. And we have done our best. We have always telling it loud and clear to our tourist friends, international friends.
Do you have any legislation that requires people to bring back the garbage?
One of our stakeholders, Eco Himalaya, which is part of the Himalayan Consensus, is actually running a project where they're collecting all of the aluminum cans, oxygen cans, and recycling them as gifts, and collecting all of the cardboard and paper that's left and making building materials. And this is an example of recycling that can be done in environmentally sustainable approach.
Let me add that the late Edmund Hillary was an inspiration for this kind of movement of making our mountain clean from the garbages.
What captures headlines these days after the earthquake hit your country has been the damage to the less tangible cultural relics, such as the old buildings that are centuries old. I believe the damages could have been irretrievable, and that's indeed a major concern for people around the world.
Yes, indeed, we are very shocked that such scale of damage happened to our World Heritage monuments, and it will take a tremendous effort on our side to restore that. But I also want to tell you that Nepal has the capacity to restore it. We will rebuild it. And it's not the first time it had happened. If you go back in the history of the earthquakes in Nepal and Kathmandu Valley, the same Dharara Tower has been broken in 1934, and it has been rebuilt. And at that time, many of these old heritage sites had been partially or fully damaged, which has been reconstructed. So, and Shanghai Expo also, I think China has seen that Nepal architectural capacity is live and kicking, and that sort of thing could be, I think it would give us an impetus to show again to the world that Nepal has that capacity to do that.
But to get this job done, you need to attract more of the tourists. With the extensive damage of those tourist attractions, Lawrence, what do you think of the economy and economic reconstruction of Nepal? The estimation of the economic cost for the reconstruction is put between 1 billion and 10 billion. Someone put it at around $5 billion. Do you think the tourism industry would remain the most important source of income for example, Mount Everest, the signature attraction of this country?
Well, historically, tourism is a very important part of Nepal's economy, not only from the point of view of pilgrimage tourism, hiking, exploring tourism, but also much of the crafts, arts, which Nepal is famous for, are geared toward the tourist market. The question right now is how to rebuild the country, and this is going to require both the restoration of all of these monuments and religious sites, which are so important to everybody. But I concur with what the ambassador says. There is the skill set there. The Nepalese have incredible craft, carving. These skills are alive. They're not dead, as in many other civilizations. They are alive and well, and these can be mobilized, can be an opportunity for creating jobs. And again, in parallel with investment lending from the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, there needs to be the reconstruction of the basic infrastructure and transport of Kathmandu and the valley, because during the insurgency, the 10-year insurgency, a lot of people from the countryside came in, and the city had overcapacity, and there was a lot of additional or illegal construction, which has now come down. And so hopefully there can be a combination of both the restoration of the historic parts of Kathmandu Valley and also the new infrastructure that's required for more efficient transport, electricity systems, water systems, and the things that can make the city more efficient to live in and better for the residents. And this, I think, will be a greater stimulus for the growth of Nepal, not only in the tourism area, but all the other areas that can develop that need the infrastructure base to do that.
One of the things that your country and Australia face and share for this, at the same time is that the Aboriginal people, the poorest, refuse to be relocated to share the dividends of urbanization and prosperity of the more developed areas. That could take a longer time for your government to consider to improve the average livelihoods of the disadvantaged social groups. With that, we come to the end of this edition dialogue.